Hokage I'll become stronger when I'm fishing. Chapter 401 to 420. Chapter 401. Whitebeard vs. Blackbeard. It's so close, I didn't even notice it. Blackbeard titch. A gleam of coldness flashed in Tautu's eyes, and he pressed his hand on the blade of the sword. T-Dolphin stopped her and said, "Don't worry, the situation is still under control, we don't need to do anything for the time being." The strength of the Navy, even in the war on the top, only showed a part, and the remaining part was not shown, and the purpose was naturally to prevent all emergencies. With all the forces in the Navy headquarters, 1-4 Emperor Pirates is simply not enough to fight against it, even 2 or even 3-3-4 Emperor Pirates, as long as Carp Sengoku and others all make a move, they can still face it. As for the short-term collapse, if there are really 3 and 4 emperors making trouble at the naval headquarters, then the world government will not be able to sit idly by, and will soon dispatch reinforcements, which will evolve into a larger battlefield. Anyway, the Navy headquarters and the world government are not afraid of any confrontation. Tiki. Whitebeard turned aside from the warring states period, shouted angrily at Blackbeard, and said in a low voice, "Only you and I will not be called a son. Tiki, you have violated the only rule on the ship that cannot be violated. You killed the rule, companion." Voice fell, and Whitebeard suddenly punched Blackbeard, and the power of shock erupted violently, causing the ground in front of him to crack and shatter. Although Warring States was not in front of him, he still took 2 steps away. Whitebeard's fight against Blackbeard is good as a side watch. You don't have to waste your fighting power and deal with both sides at the same time. The goal of the war is victory, and the goal is to reduce losses and expand the enemy's losses as much as possible. When they got to Blackbeard, they were all furious and tried to rush through, but Whitebeard stopped Marco and the others. "Don't come here, Marco, for the sake of the ghost of the 4th Division Captain Sachi, I want to kill this guy myself and be a stop." Whitebeard's voice swayed away and rushed towards Blackbeard. Blackbeard's dark fruit is indeed the nemesis of all fruit power users, but it is only the nemesis of fruit power, and it is useless for pure physical skills and domineering. After a few tricks, Whitebeard understood Blackbeard's ability, and immediately he slashed Blackbeard's chest with a knife and knocked it to the ground. If it is replaced by the Whitebeard of the peak period, even if it does not rely on the ability of the shock fruit, just relying on domineering and physical skills, it can kill the Blackbeard at the moment alive on the spot. But on the Blackbeard side, there is not only Blackbeard alone. There are many pirates behind it, and there is no lack of bounties of more than 400 million or even more than 500 million. Under the order of Blackbeard, they finally shot in unison, and they are about to go forward to besiege Whitebeard. Almost there. Who was standing at the top of the naval fortress, finally muttered slowly when he saw this scene, and dispersed the space barrier of the Day Tiger. Nami noticed that there seemed to be a change in the surroundings, and couldn't help but look at Yagami Sudo. "I'll take Whitebeard's last ride." Yagami Kanto stepped forward. Nami hesitated for a while, and was about to ask, "What about me?" when she heard the words of Yagami Aoto. "Just stay here and don't move, I guarantee you can leave the Navy headquarters safely." Iori Kangdu didn't look back, and said casually, "If you died here, wouldn't I have saved you a few times so much that you wouldn't even be able to get the interest back?" Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Chapter 302, Send Off Whitebeard. Cough, cough. Damn, monsters, bastards, still won't die quietly. Blackbeard endured a shock from Whitebeard, and blood spurted out of his mouth, but his physique was exceptionally strong. Just like cowhide candy, coupled with the special ability of the dark fruit, he took the blow of Whitebeard hard. And was not seriously injured. But he didn't dare to fight against Whitebeard alone. At this moment, Whitebeard's performance has already exceeded common sense. Any wound on Whitebeard's body, if anyone is placed on an ordinary person, is enough to make an ordinary person die on the spot. But Whitebeard can still fight. Like a monster indeed. Kill him. Under the roar of Blackbeard, many of the big pirates behind him pulled out. fire guns and swords, and swarmed towards Whitebeard. All of them were about to besiege. But before their attack could fall, a humming sound suddenly came from above. I saw that the air in front of Whitebeard suddenly took on the shape of a day tiger, and neither bullets nor swords could pass through this day tiger. This is... The expression on Blackbeard's face froze. Expressions of many people of the Blackbeard pirates also stopped. Together with Marshal Warring States, Aokiji Kayabusa and other admirals, their expressions all changed at this moment. All raised their heads and looked towards the area where Whitebeard was located. I can't stand it anymore. In the silence, Yagami Kangdoing emerged from the collapsed execution platform. He was wearing a black cloak, short black hair, and ordinary clogs, and walked over at this step. The entire battlefield was silent and even the fighting was stopped for this reason. After all, the man I fought against made you so humiliated before he left, it's really hard to see. Yagami Kanto came over slowly. The nearby navy was dripping cold sweat on his forehead. No one dared to stop it, and even many people stepped back subconsciously. Even though the 8 gods Kangdu did not show any momentum, did not release the domineering arrogance, but on this battlefield, his figure came step by step, but it was still like an unattainable and dangerous peak, which was prohibitive. This is the name of the strongest in the world. No, the deterrent force it brings. Iori Kangdu. Blackbeard looked at Yagami Kanto who was approaching. His face became ugly. He never thought that Yagami Kangdu would appear here, and in his plan, before he captured Whitebeard's Junjun fruit, he had absolutely no plans to fight Yagami Kangdu. When Yagami Kangdu fought with Whitebeard, he was still a member of the Whitebeard pirates, and he witnessed the battle with his own eyes, and also knew very well the terrifying strength of Yagami Kangta. Compared with the aging Whitebeard, Yagami Kangdu is in his prime and is at his peak. Even if he gets the power of the Junjun fruit, he has to take a long-term plan to deal with Yagami Kangdu, and now he doesn't want to fight Yagami Kangdu at all. Go! Yagami Kangta ignored Blackbeard and even turned to the Blackbeard pirates. He raised his head and looked at Whitebeard, who was standing there, covered in blood. I'm here to see you off, Whitebeard. Whitebeard was silent for a few seconds, and said in a slow tone, thank you for what happened before. Chapter 303, Traitors, are you also worthy of cooperation? If it hadn't been for Yagami Kangdu's silent shot to stop Squard's knife, he probably wouldn't have been able to save Ace today, but unfortunately, he's going to leave, and there's no way to return this favor to Yagami Kang. Fight. Before leaving, I owe a favor, and I have to say that it is a bit regretful for Whitebeard. No thanks. 8 gods Kangdu smiled lightly and said, your battle has opened the door to a new era, and I am the beneficiary. Whitebeard knew what Yagami Kangdu said was right, and the obsession in his heart gradually dissipated. Your last strength, I accept it. As for the Blackbeard, it's up to me to solve it. Yagami Kangdu looked at the Whitebeard, pulled out Murasama, and said something inexplicable in many people's hearts. I saw Murasama in the hands of Yagami Kangdu burst into a ray of light, entered Whitebeard's body, intertwined with Whitebeard's soul, and sent this ray of soul to the sky. Whitebeard, the era of Edward Newgate. The end of it. At the same time, a familiar reminder sounded in Yagami Kangdu's ear. Edward Newgate, the Whitebeard is dead, you got 100 bait. Yagami Kangdu then turned his head and looked at the Blackbeards. Blackbeard was thinking when Yagami Kangta appeared, how to find a chance to take away Whitebeard's power, but Yagami Kangta's last words to Whitebeard made him have a vague feeling in his heart. Hey, Yagami Kangdu, I have a grudge with you. Blackbeard obviously didn't want to face Yagami Kangdu at this time. He lowered his voice and said, Whitebeard is dead. The Navy is our enemy. How about we kill the Navy first? Hearing Blackbeard's words, Warring States' complexion suddenly changed. He had actually expected Yagami Kangdu to appear on the top of the battlefield. After all, Yagami Kangdu was still there a few days ago. The Chambord Islands appeared. The secretly arranged combat power, such as the Peach Rabbit Tea Dolphin, is prepared to deal with the Yagami Kangdu. As for the Yagami Kangdu pirates, The eyes of the Navy and the government are all staring at the Yagami Kangdu pirates to determine the Yagami Kangdu. The people of the fighting pirates are still on the side of Wenkoku and Wano. That is to say, Yagami Kangdu alone is nothing to worry about. However, if Yagami Kangdu and Blackbeard join forces, the problem will be serious. The naval headquarters will simultaneously face Yagami Kangdu, the remnants of the Whitebeard pirates and the Blackbeard pirates, and they will fall into a great crisis. Come and be destroyed. How about it, Yagami Soto? Blackbeard opened his hands and said to Yagami Kang. In fact, he was a little anxious in his heart. If he didn't quickly use his ability on Whitebeard's corpse to strip away the power of the shocking fruit, he would not be able to get it. Destroying the Navy headquarters is a very good proposal. I just have this plan. Yagami Kangdu looked at Blackbeard, and spoke slowly. The words made Blackbeard grin, revealing a smile, and also made the complexion of warring states and others turn ashen. But then, Yagami Kangdu's next sentence made Blackbeard's face freeze instantly. But, it's up to you. A traitor under Whitebeard has no qualifications to join forces with me. This sentence is very plain, and the tone is also very proud, but it is said here without any discomfort. That's right. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 304, The Meaning of the War on the Top. Yagami Kangdu is the strongest in the world, once the head of the 4 emperors, and Blackbeard is just a traitor under Whitebeard. In terms of status and strength, why would he propose to join forces with Yagami Kangdu? Blackbeard's face froze and turned a little. It was ugly, but in the next moment, his open arms rose slightly, and he grinned. Ha 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 ha, it seems that I was underestimated. You are the man who took the world's strongest name from Whitebeard. You are indeed very powerful, but the power I have gained is also. Boom. Before he finished speaking, Yashin Kangdu waved his cloak, and a surging power of the day tiger suddenly erupted in the void, squeezing the air in front of him, forming a terrifying shock wave, brazenly heading towards Blackbeard. Bombard the past. Blackbeard roared, and suddenly released the power of the dark fruit, absorbing the power of the day tiger that invaded. But what terrified him was that the strength of the power of the day tiger that Yagami Kangdu had underestimated was a bit beyond his expectations. The dark fruit can make all the power of the devil fruit to naught, but there is a limit. It doesn't mean that any ordinary person can completely devour Whitebeard's shocking power when he gets the dark fruit. 8 God Kangdu's 8-door armor is still there, the peak of Whitebeard's shocking power. It's not that Blackbeard is a dark fruit that can completely absorb it. Boom! Blackbeard's face changed greatly, and he was slammed by the day tiger and flew backwards. And the members of the Blackbeard pirates in the back all changed their faces, and they all took action to resist, showing their armed domineering. Even if everyone joins forces to resist, they are still in the battle of the 8 gods, as if destroying the dry and pulling the rot, generally collapsed. The unbridled attack of the day tiger smashed the ground in front of Yashin Kang, and also caused Blackbeard and others to scream and fly upside down in all directions. Just one hit. The Blackbeard pirates were defeated. At this moment, the power displayed by Yagami Kangdu also shocked countless navies and pirates on the entire battlefield. Pirates, Blackbeard himself is Shichibukai, and the others are all famous and ferocious pirates in the sea. Even on the battlefield of the war on the top, they are still a huge fighting force. Against Yagami Kangdu, he was torn apart with a single blow. This is the strength of the strongest man in the world. That guy is too strong. At the top of the naval fortress, Nami used her arm to block the gust of wind that swept away, and when she opened her eyes again to look at the battlefield, there was a little shock in the depths of her eyes. Looked at the figure of Yagami Kangdu from a distance, and their hearts were surging. Went to the depths of the great root, the more they could realize the terrifying meaning of the name Yagami Kangdu. When they were in the East China Sea, they only know that Yagami Aoto is the strongest in the world, but they don't understand what this concept is. On the empty island, they saw Yagami Kangdu kill Enelu in one blow, and his power was unparalleled, but compared with the later naval admirals, it seemed that there was not much difference. It can be placed on the vast battlefield of the war on the top. The power displayed by Yagami Kangdu has once again refreshed the meaning of the title of the strongest in the world. To read the ununderlined version of the novel, please download Fei Lu's novel. Chapter 305. The battle arena is too small. It's not that Yagami Soto's strength is only that level. But, the stage is not big enough. Without a big enough stage, without suitable opponents, it is impossible to reflect the level of strength, and the current battlefield on top of the war is a huge stage that can truly show the strength of Yagami Kangdu. Cough, cough, damn. Blackbeard struggled to get up from the ruins. His face was extremely ugly. He knew that it was too late to go to Whitebeard's corpse at this time. He gritted his teeth, and was extremely decisive at the moment. He greeted his subordinates, and planned to withdraw directly. But he wanted to withdraw, and Yagami Kangdu did not intend to let it go. Saw Yagami Kangdu standing 100 meters away, and took a step with a calm expression. The whole person disappeared into the void, and when he reappeared, he was already in front of Blackbeard. Punch out. Dark water. Blackbeard flashed a cold light in his eyes, and with a loud roar, he stretched out his palm and grabbed the fist of Yagami Kangdu, fully stimulating the power of the dark fruit. Under his overload burst, the dark fruit barely eroded the power of the day tiger, turning the power of the day tiger into invisible. But Yagami Kangdu's expression did not change, and his fist continued to be sent forward. What the dark fruit can absorb is only the ability of the devil fruit. Today's Yagami Kangdu, in terms of physique and domineering, is comparable to the existence of the beasts Kaido. Oh! But this trace of joy has not yet expanded, it will be immediately solidified. I only felt a terrifying force coming from my arm. This is not the power of the devil fruit, but the power of the flesh, the pure armed domineering, the ultimate armed domineering. Yes. Yagami Kangdu's armed arrogance and domineering, in the continuous practice, and in the follow-up final battle with Kaido, has been completely awakened, reaching the highest level. Boom! Blackbeard is under the blow of Yagami Kangdu. The entire arm almost collapsed directly, and the whole person flew backwards toward the rear. Under the punch of Yashin Kangdu, it flew nearly half the square and smashed into the ruins. Captain! How? The many crew members of Blackbeard struggled to get up. Seeing this scene, the expressions on their faces were a little shocked, and there was a hint of disbelief in their eyes. They know that Iori Kangdu is very strong, but they are also very aware of the strength of Blackbeard. With the particularity of the dark fruit, all able people must be greatly restricted in front of Blackbeard, otherwise, they will not be willing to follow Blackbearded. But even if he absorbed the fruit power of Yagami Kangdu with the dark fruit, he was still punched by Yagami Kangdu with the power of pure flesh and flew nearly halfway across the square. Day Tiger. Yagami Kangdu didn't chase after Blackbeard, but turned his head to look at the many pirates under Blackbeard's command, reached out to them, and bent his fingers into fists. Om! The power of divine might surged, and an area of several hundred meters in a radius suddenly turned into a vortex visible to the naked eye, and began to roll frantically. The many pirates under Blackbeard's command changed their faces, and they used their abilities to try to break free from the vortex, but no matter how hard they struggled, they couldn't break free. Fei Lu reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Chapter 306. The Blackbeard pirates are destroyed. Wrapped in the vortex, all of them went to the center involuntarily, and finally everyone was swept into the center by the vortex. Bang, bang, bang. Armament color is domineering like paper. It was crushed and collapsed in an instant, and many bounties were up to 400 million and 500 million pirates, like soft persimmons, were crushed one by the whirlpool. Turned into blood and broken bones, and then completely smashed into slag. When the vortex dissipated, the 9 subordinates of Blackbeard were all dead. Whoosh! Yagami Kangdu stepped out again, across half the square, and fell down at Blackbeard, who was about to get up. Blackbeard roared wildly, stimulating the ability of the dark fruit to the limit. The darkness swayed across the sky, gritted his teeth against the power of the 8 gods, but the 8 gods were like a collapsed giant peak. Blocking, just stepping on the darkness embedded little by little. Ultimately, the darkness released by the Blackbeard, like a black eardrum, was smashed to pieces by Yagami Kingdu, and the power of the Day Tiger was poured into the earth. Under the violent power of the Day Tiger, even though Blackbeard's body was strong, it still exploded into a cloud of blood in an instant. Kacha, kacha, the power of the Day Tiger smashed Blackbeard, and then poured into the ground. Under the shocked and horrified gazes of countless people, the entire naval headquarters was centered on this point, and a crack like a spider web appeared. It spreads in all directions. From Yagami Kingdu's outrageous action to now, in just a few minutes before and after, the situation on the entire battlefield of the war has changed drastically. The Blackbeard pirates fell. The naval headquarters collapsed. With the fall of the Blackbeard pirates, the stone in the heart of the warring states fell to the ground. Follow the Whitebeard pirates with all their might, and don't run away from any of the pirates. Warring States clenched his fists and gave orders in a deep voice. While staring at Yagami Kingdu, he was already ready to do it. What he is most worried about is that Yagami Sudo and Blackbeard join forces, and then coupled with the Whitebeard pirates, it is really possible that the Navy headquarters will be in crisis. But now, the Blackbeard pirates have been destroyed, and even though Yagami Kingdu's personal strength is almost surpassing that of Whitebeard at the peak of that year, there is not much room for him to play on this battlefield where the war is on top. Even in the heart of the Warring States period, thinking secretly how to do it, so as to have the opportunity to keep Yagami Kingdu in the naval headquarters. Once the Yagami Kingdu is defeated, no matter how strong the Yagami Kingdu pirates are, they will not be able to escape the end of their destruction. At that time, there will only be one red-haired pirate group left in the ocean. It can be said that the era of the great pirates will almost end there. Declared the end, and the status of the world government and the navy will also be stable and completely unshakable. Even if the revolutionary army is doubled, it is impossible to set off any storms. The Blackbeard pirates, annihilated. The war is coming to an end. Many people who watched the scenes in the Navy headquarters through video phone bugs, after gradually recovering from the shock, couldn't help but murmured in their hearts. The appearance of Blackbeard was a big event, and the appearance of Yagami Sudo was even more of a big event. However, after Yagami Kingdu destroyed Blackbeard, the war should be over. Unless all members of Yagami Kingdu pirates arrive and fight the Navy again, the victory of the Navy should be undisputed. Chapter 307. Justice, defined by the strongest. Although Fire Fist Ace was rescued, Whitebeard fell on the battlefield, and the entire Whitebeard pirates suffered heavy casualties. In any case, the Navy won. At this moment, on the battlefield at the top of the war, watching Yagami Kingdu destroy the Blackbeard pirates, and then kill the Blackbeards completely, Marco and other captains of the Whitebeard pirates, his eyes showed understanding and complexity expression. The Eight Gods Kingdu. Ace looked at the direction of Yagami Kingdu from a distance, and his expression was complicated for a while. Although Whitebeard died, Yagami Kingdu undoubtedly saved Whitebeard from the humiliation before his death, and also wiped out the Blackbeard pirates. Group. For the entire Whitebeard pirates, this is a kindness that is difficult to get rid of. In this sea, especially the Whitebeard pirates, it is the most important kindness. After this battle, even if they won't join the Yagami Kingdu pirates, they can no longer stand on the opposite side of the Yagami Kingdu pirates. Many people have already raised the idea of withdrawing from the stage of the era. Anyway, this era already belongs to the Yagami Kingdu, they couldn't stop it in the first place, and there is no reason to stop it now. If they don't join, then let's wait and see. However, it is not the time to consider these issues yet. The admirals of the Navy are still chasing them, and the green pheasants have directly frozen the sea and the ship, so it is not easy to evacuate in a short time. The battle continued, blood and death everywhere. And in this fierce battle, in the center of the square, the figure of Yagami Kingdu slowly flew out from the huge crack and came into the air. What is he going to do? Many people looked up at Yagami Kingdu, and a trace of doubt rose in their hearts. Yagami Kingdu flew under the gaze of half-countless eyes, and stood with his hands behind his back, overlooking the entire Navy headquarters. His black cloak kept shaking in the sea breeze. "From the moment your Navy defined me as a pirate for face," I said, "let you remember what you did on that day, because it will affect the whole world." Yagami Kengdu's words spread calmly, echoing clearly on the entire island, making the movements in the hands of countless people unable to stop. "Come here." The expressions of everyone were gloomy, serious, and indifferent. Justice is written by the victors, and defined by the strongest. This world is ruled by the world government. Whoever you want to say is a pirate, of course, is a pirate. I have a question now, Sengoku, is it time for me to take off my title of pirate? Yagami Aoto looked in the direction of Admiral Sengoku so calmly. Warring States has a gloomy face. Every scene at this moment is broadcast to the whole world. He is very clear about this. His eyes show seriousness, and solemnly said, "How can the crime of pirates be written off, even if you kill Blackbeard the pirate's CA and make up for the crimes you've committed?" "Very good." Yagami Kengdu smiled. His smile was very light, as if he had long known that the Warring States period was the answer. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 308, The Navy Headquarters, Disappear Completely. I, Yagami Kengdu, ruler of the seas of all countries, here, at this moment, officially declare war on your navy and the world government. Is no need for any harsh tone, no need for any domineering words. This simple sentence, just uttered in a plain narrative tone, has already caused the entire naval headquarters to fall into silence. And through the video phone bug, watching the scene, the countless people in this scene are also buzzing in their minds at this moment, and their minds are suddenly blank. Declare war. This is a declaration of war against the world government that has ruled this world for 800 years. The Yagami pseudo-pirates, who have always been named pirates, at this moment, under the attention of the whole world, completely open with the fangs that belong to it. Its goal is not the 4 emperors, nor the One Piece, but the whole world. From this moment on, using the definition of a pirate to describe the 8 gods Kengdu and the 10,000 kingdoms is already a bit insufficient. No matter what the final result will be if the nations declare war on the world government, this represents 2 huge regimes competing for the domination of this world. This moment. Whether it was the Warring States period or Aokiji and the others, the expressions on their faces all changed drastically. Are you serious, Yagami Kanto? Sengoku's pupils shrank violently, and a look of disbelief and shock appeared on his face. He had no idea that Yagami Kengdu would be here, on this battlefield above war, to openly declare war on the world government and the navy. This is, right, the world's declaration of war. This is really incredible. There was a hint of awe-inspiring color in the eyes of the green pheasant, and he knew very well what kind of meaning Badu said. You must know that even the Revolutionary Army has not publicly declared war on the world government until now, but the Yagami Kengdu at this moment has done so. This is really a bit. Kizaru couldn't keep calm either, and although his tone still had a habit of wretchedness, it was more of a slightly suppressed trembling. Yagami Kengdu lowered his head and calmly looked at the Warring States period. The war has already begun. Let this navy headquarters disappear completely. Arrogant. Warring States looked at Yagami Kengdu in the sky. His fists were gradually clenched, his face showed a bit of gritted teeth and anger, and he shouted at Yagami Kengdu, "This is an island located in the center of the world, to those who are afraid of wicked people. Said that the navy guarding this place is of great significance. The name of justice will never be destroyed. Don't make false claims to sink this place." Yagami Kengdu. No. The 8 gods. Kengdu slowly opened his hands, lifted them up, and said calmly, "You made a mistake. This is not a false statement, nor is it a declaration of war, it is a notification." As the voice fell, Yagami Kengdu raised his arms and fingers suddenly folded. As early as when Blackbeard was killed, the day tiger, which had been poured into the ground by Yagami Kengdu, swept away brazenly at this moment, sweeping the entire naval headquarters. Looking at the sky above the navy headquarters, I can see that the entire Navy headquarters seems to be being held by an invisible big hand, like twisting a towel, to uproot the entire Navy headquarters. To read the underlined version of the novel, please download Fei Lu's novel. Chapter 309, Super Tornado. Damn. Veins on Zhongguo's forehead overflowed, and he couldn't contain his anger for a while. With a loud roar, he jumped up, transformed into the shape of a great Buddha, and slapped the 8 gods Kingdu with one palm. The terrifying impact swept away, bombarding Yagami Kingdu in the sky, to knock Yagami Kingdu from the sky and stop Yagami Kingdu's destruction. But the face of this blow from the Warring States period, Yagami Kingdu just pressed his backhand. The surging day tiger crashed down and collided with the impact, making the entire sky like a pool of water, with ripples visible to the naked eye, swaying in all directions. The roaring sound was like thunder, blasting in the ears of countless people. Boom! The day tiger seemed to be twisted into a sturdy force, and it smashed the impact of the Warring States abruptly. The huge body of the Warring States also groaned and fell from the sky. In the square. Seeing that the Warring States period couldn't stop Yagami Kingdu, Taotu and T-Dolphin, who were hiding in the dark, couldn't care less, turned into 2 figures and rushed out, attacking Yagami Kingdu in the sky. Go! Yagami Kingdu didn't look at the 2 of them, but a strand of hair flew up, and the hurricane incarnation that was wrapped around the hair like a small tornado suddenly swelled. Peach Rabbit and T-Dolphin crushed away. Countless captains of the Navy headquarters were swept away by the huge hurricane without any resistance. Even the major generals and even the lieutenant generals of the headquarters were full of horror, barely holding their bodies in the strong wind. What is this? Taotu was caught off guard and was forced to go in the face of the hurricane that swept over. This sword turned into a huge sword and flew through the air. It cut the hurricane in half with one sword, and stopped the gust of wind that swept the world for a moment. But it just stopped for a moment. Hurricane incarnation has no entity, no matter how strong her swordsmanship is, even if she has top-notch armament, she can only consume the energy of the hurricane incarnation and cannot destroy the hurricane body. Multiple wind blades. In the howling wind, there was a dull sound, and then the tornado hurricane that penetrated the heavens and the earth. The internal wind suddenly began to condense and close, turning into countless blue shimmering wind blades, swept down like a violent storm. Peach Rabbit and T-Dolphin had to wield their weapons to parry during this offensive. Stop me! Garp stood in the rubble and gritted his teeth, but in the end it was impossible to just sit back and ignore it. Yagami Kingdu. But before he could get close, Yagami Kingdu's eyes flashed slightly. Wow! The island of the Navy headquarters that was about to be twisted into a twist shape suddenly bulged, and there was a huge palm that seemed to hold up the sky. This palm grabbed it brazenly, and pressed Garp directly into the palm of his hand. Boom! Garp was caught off guard, was held down by the huge palm, and was forced down from the sky, and slapped the already broken harbor with a slap. Immediately after that, the horrific land of the Navy headquarters stopped collapsing, but began to squirm, like a giant who had fallen into a pit, struggling to climb out from the bottom of the pit. Under the stunned gaze of countless people, Fei Lu reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 410, The Fearful Akainu. Which was condensed from nearly half of the naval headquarters, bulged up the upper body like this, and one palm pressed Garp down firmly. Damn it! Get out of here, old man! Garp roared angrily and slammed out a fist, smashing the huge rock palm into pieces and rushing out from the crack. He could rush out far. Another palm slapped over again. Damn the soil fruit of the natural system, how come so many powerful combat powers appear? Sengoku watched Garp's battle, and his face couldn't help but look very ugly. The gust of wind that swept the world, and this terrifying giant of rock and earth, are not recorded in the data. Other words, the Yagami Kingdu pirates have 2 more top combat powers. No wonder Yagami Kingdu dared to appear in the Navy headquarters alone. Day Tiger. Yagami Kingdu stopped releasing the Day Tiger on the entire island, but took a step in the sky, suddenly came to the front of the Warring States period, and punched at the Warring States period. Contains 10% of the power. It is a punch from Yagami Kingdu with all his strength. His goal from the very beginning was not to make this island look like anything, but to Sengoku himself. It is just an island. Even if it is destroyed, the Navy can find other islands to rebuild the Navy headquarters. But if the Admiral Sengoku dies, even if he can still find someone to fill the position, there will inevitably be a huge gap in combat effectiveness. Perceiving the power of Yagami Kingdu's punch, Sengoku's face is dramatic, and he can't avoid it at all. Because Yagami Kingdu's Day Tiger is the same as Whitebeard's Shock Fruit, it hits the entire front, and there is no escape. Under the crisis, the Warring States made a loud noise, and his own strength was fully stimulated. The power of the giant Buddha of the Phantom Beast was exerted to the limit, and the armed arrogance was also attached to the whole body, and the palms were pushed forward to maximize the shock wave. Boom! The power that erupted from this collision can be described as earth-shattering. In just an instant, the aftermath of the swaying caused the navies in all directions to spurt blood from their mouths and fly backwards, many of whom were generals from the headquarters. In the roar, the land between Yagami Kingdu and the Warring States period was even more so. A terrifying abyss suddenly opened up, dividing the entire naval headquarters in two, and the seawater also poured in, forming a river running through the island. In the roar. After all, the impact of the Warring States period was the Day Tiger who couldn't resist the Yagami Kanto. Today's Yagami Kingdu. 4. The power of the world of the pirate world. The suppression is not so serious. The power is even more than the Whitebeard in the peak period. Even if the Warring States go all out, he is not a person who can resist it head-on. PFF'd. The shock wave was destroyed, and the armed arrogance was also broken. The Day Tiger bombarded the body of the Big Buddha, forcibly knocking the Warring States back from the form of the Big Buddha back to the prototype. The whole person flew backwards, and a mouthful of blood spurted out, scattered ruins. Marshal of the Warring States. Seeing that Sengoku was bombarded by Yagami Kingdu, and it was a frontal blow, countless navies on the battlefield couldn't help but show horror. Want to come up to support, but the average navy can't even survive the incarnation of a hurricane. The rock giants and hurricane incarnations standing between the sky and the earth, one earth and one wind, are like two gods standing there. Their heights are far higher than the fortress of the naval headquarters. Even the Lieutenant General of the Naval Headquarters, it is difficult to get on before. Chapter 411. Fight against Martial Warring States. Aokiji, Kizaru, Akainu and other 3 generals are chasing the remnants of the Whitebeard pirates. I thought that there was only one Yagami Kingdu behind, but no one thought that the Whitebeard pirates would fight and retreat. Yagami Kingdu is in the rear, but he is fighting the entire naval headquarters by himself. Sakura Feather Slash. Seeing that the situation was critical, Tautu let out a low voice, held the hilt of the sword in both hands, and suddenly stepped into the sky. The blade in his hand waved, bursting with cherry blossom-like, feather-like sword chi, cutting the hurricane into shape. Piece by piece. Taking this opportunity, the T-Dolphin bypassed the incarnation of the hurricane, and because the distance was too far, he could only use the fire gun to shoot 2 shots at Yagami Kingdu far away. But although he has the domineering arrogance of predicting the future, today's Yagami Kingdu can also predict the future, and his knowledge is even higher than him. In addition, Yagami Kingdu's armed arrogance and physical strength have also reached to an appalling level. His armament is comparable to Garp's, and his physical strength is comparable to Kaido's. Whoosh! In the face of the 3 bullets fired by the T-Dolphin, which condensed the domineering black and armed bullets, Yagami Kingdu directly did not dodge or evade, ignored it at all, and continued to charge towards the Warring States period. The 3 bullets were shot on Yagami Kingdu's chest, and the 3 positions on Yagami Kingdu's chest showed a dark and domineering look, and these 3 positions happened to be the 3 positions that were shot. Chang, chang, chang. The 3 bullets fell, as if they were shot on steel, sparks splattered, and the skin on Yagami Kingta's chest was slightly sunken, but that's all. How? The T-Dolphin did not show a look of horror on his face. Because Yagami Kangdu is stronger than him, he can only predict Yagami Kangdu's dodging movements, but because both parties can predict the future, that is to say, they can change what will happen. Abilities can be seen as counteracting each other, because both will participate in the change. But what he didn't expect was that Yagami Kangdu's armed arrogance and body were so powerful that he directly ignored his attack and was a complete mess. Cough. The Warring States was blown upside down, and the building behind the naval headquarters collapsed. He coughed while covering his chest in the rubble. He felt Kangdu of the 8 gods rushing over. Incarnated in the form of a Buddha. Radiating golden light, threw a punch against the rushing Yagami Kangdu. Yagami Kanto also punched down. Boom! When the fists collided, the Warring States were once again blown upside down. If the blow just now can be explained by the meaning of the Warring States period, then this blow has already shown to everyone present that the Warring States Admiral is not the opponent of Yagami Kangdu. There is a gap in strength between Kangdu and Yagami. The situation is not good. Seeing that the situation had taken a turn for the worse, the T-Dolphin rushed over to try to help, but before he could get close, the 8 gods Kangdu threw a punch, and the Day Tiger suddenly bombarded. Because both parties can predict the future that they see will not happen, and the illusion that it will be rewritten is equivalent to the ability to cancel the face of this blow, the T-Dolphin could only barely avoid the front, and folded his arms in front of him to resist, but the whole person was still blown upside down. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 412, Unstoppable Terrorist Power. He smashed several buildings with his back and finally stopped. Today's Iori Kangdu's strength has reached a terrifying level. After all, the T-Dolphin is a little bit worse than Aoki Akainu and the others. It is this thread that makes him no longer able to entangle the Iori Kangdu at the moment. Qualified to the attack of the T-Dolphin, and it can blow you away with a single move. Whether it is 2-color domineering or physique, strength, it is suppressed in all directions, and it is suppressed by more than 1 grade. How to fight, and Akainu and the others could only rely on the special nature of the natural devil fruit to interfere and restrain Yagami Kangdu to a certain extent, and even get Whitebeard's experience pack from Yagami Kangdu. After 950 o'clock, Aokiji and others may not be able to cause much interference to the current Yagami Kangdu. In this world, there is an upper limit to the strength. People like Garp, even if they eat the Momo fruit, it is also impossible to increase the speed of strength by 100 times, even 10%, I am afraid it is difficult to increase. But Yagami Kangdu does not have this restriction. With the talent system, he can raise his strength and raise his strength, and finally he can stand to a terrifying level. After being disturbed by the T-Dolphin, the Warring States period reluctantly took a breath, but he dared not dare. After a pause, he immediately merged his palms and slapped towards Yagami Kangdu, with a terrifying impact. Om! Facing the impact of the Warring States period, Yagami Kangdu's expression remained unchanged, and he waved his arm with a black cloak. It was unbelievable in the Warring States period. His impact, with such a light swing of Yagami Kangdu, actually changed direction. It was as if the flood hit, Yagami Kangdu waved downstream, and the surging river turned a corner. Bend and swipe in the other direction. Wow! The impact smashed into the town, shattering countless pieces, and also wrapped a large number of natives in it, which collapsed and vomited blood. How is it possible? Warring States looked unbelievable. In the past, the 8 gods Kangdu, the strength of the tiger was not strong enough. And it was still impossible for the tiger to deal with such an attack with such ease, but now the tiger of the day is completely above any power, it is naturally a random swing, can be direct the opponent's strength in the direction of the day tiger. Yagami Kangdu didn't speak, he took a step forward, and the 5 fingers of his right hand were folded together, and when he went up, it was a punch. After the fist of his right hand was blown out, he punched again with his left hand. Boom, boom, boom. I saw Iori Kangdu, as if he was hitting a sandbag. In just 1 second, he threw 3 punches in a row. I saw Sengoku's chest and abdomen, The parts that were bombarded directly showed a fist-like depression, and the golden light was bombarded with a burst of flashes. PFF'd. Another mouthful of blood spurted out, and the warring states flew backwards. Endured an attack like Yagami Kingdu with his physique, he couldn't hold it any longer, and the internal organs of his body were severely injured by the impact of Nei Tianyu. At the same time that blood spurted out of his mouth, there was also a trace of despair on Sengoku's face. I believe, he knows that Yagami Kingta is very strong, and knows that Yagami Kingta defeated Whitebeard and Kaido, but he still underestimated Yagami Kingta's strength. The last time Yagami Kingta attacked the Navy headquarters, it was the design that collapsed the headquarters of the fortress, and the Aokiji Kaibaru was advancing in the city, and Akainu and Garp were not there, so they barely escaped. The 413th chapter, The Divided Naval Headquarters. But now, Yagami Kingdu confronted him head-on. He tried his best, but he couldn't resist the power of Yagami Kingdu. How could he be so strong? Warring States was full of disbelief. You must know that he was also an admiral who fought against the peak state of Whitebeard several times. Now that he was promoted to the field marshal, his strength has not declined much, but he can also fight against the strongest Whitebeard, but he can't stop the current Iori. Kingdo. Oops. The situation is not good. I thought that there were Sengoku, Garp and others in the back, and the Yagami Kingdu couldn't make any waves at all, but within a few minutes, Sengoku fell into a huge crisis, which made Aoji Huang, who was chasing the Whitebeard pirates. The faces of the monkeys and the others changed drastically. If the warring states were killed by Yagami Kingdu, the seriousness of the situation would rise to an unbelievable level. You know, Yagami Kingdu has declared war on the world government. And in this case, if Yagami Kingdu is still there, the naval headquarters killed the naval marshal, then the momentum of the 10,000 kingdoms may swell to an unprecedented level. At that time, I am afraid that there will be signs of 100 responses all over the world. Those countries that have never joined the world government are likely to be under the command of Wang Guo, and even countries that have joined the world government may also defection. Bachi Changgu Yu. Kizaru was the first to give up chasing the Whitebeard pirates. His whole body turned into a golden light, and he suddenly came to the top of Yagami Kingdu, with a crackling 8-footed Changdu, trying to stop Yagami Kingdu from continuing to pursue Sengoku. Just raised his hand and banged in the face of Kizaru's attack. With one punch, the entire void was distorted, as if a fist that could shatter the sky rose into the sky, and in an instant, all the lasers in the sky were hit. Exploding in the sky, good fireworks explode in the sky, with great momentum and shock. Yagami Kingdu's punch shattered the void, and Kizaru realized that it was not good, and when he wanted to use his speed to dodge, he found that he had no time to dodge. Bang! 8-foot Changguyu was blown up by a punch, and the whole body of Huang Yuan also turned into a golden light and exploded, and the whole person flew upside down towards the sky. Yagami Kingdu kept his footsteps and continued to rush in the direction of the warring states. One step down, he came to the front of the warring states. With another punch, the blood of the warring states was thrown upside down again. Big things are bad. Hurry up and stop Yagami Kingdu. Seeing this scene, all the navy finally panicked, and no one thought that the strength of Yagami Kingdu would be so fierce. With his own power, he defeated the warring states period, blasted the T-dolphins, and blew up the yellow monkey. On this battlefield, no one could stop him. Frozen, Aokiji noticed that the situation in the rear was taking a turn for the worse. There was a trace of horror in the middle, and he couldn't help but give up chasing the Whitebeard pirates, and rushed towards Yagami Kingdu. Person rushed over, his devil fruit ability was fully activated, and the two icicles wrapped in the cold air and froze directly towards the 8-god Kingdu. In the face of Aokiji's block, Yagami Kingta's response was still a punch. Kacha. Under the punch of Yashin Kangdu, the already fragmented square was once again torn apart, as if it was hit by a meteorite. The ice released by the green pheasant was also blasted by the violent day tiger in an instant. Broken apart. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 414, The Power of a Punch, no one can stop it. This day tiger swept through unstoppably, encasing the green pheasant in it, directly smashing him into countless ice shards, and abruptly knocked it out of the naval headquarters. Admiral Green Pheasant. How is it possible, even the Qing Pheasant General? The nearby navy saw this scene. The horror on their faces had reached an unprecedented level. NT seen it with their own eyes. Who would believe that the highest combat effectiveness of their naval headquarters, the generals of the naval headquarters, would be knocked down with a single punch? That's it. 2 punches. The 2 admirals were blasted away. Yagami Kangta ignored Aokiji and Kyabu and rushed towards the warring states again. There was no fierce expression on his face, only calm and indifference. Admiral, there is no doubt that he will die today, no one can stop him. Akainu sees that the situation in the rear is not good, and he is the only one left, and it is difficult to continue chasing the Whitebeard pirates. Now he can only grit his teeth and charge back. Come back. He clenched his fist, the magma surged wildly, like a volcanic eruption, scoured the fragmented square, and fought towards Yagami Kangdu. Boom. To deal with him, it was still a punch from Yagami Kangdu. Under Yagami Kangdu's punch, the magma was blasted open, splashing in all directions, and the surging day tiger swept over. Even if Akainu was already prepared, roared, and went all out to arrive, it is still like a man's arm as a car. Ah, ah. The day tiger bombarded Akainu's body, spattering the magma from his body, and finally the whole person turned into magma and collapsed. At this moment, on the entire battlefield, almost all eyes are focused on Yagami Kangdu, whether it is Nami and others, the Whitebeard pirates, or the Lieutenant General of the Navy headquarters, all eyes are full of expressions. Surprisingly consistent. That is shock. The power of one punch is unstoppable. Looking at the entire sea, whoever can blow the admiral into the air with one move, looking at the history of the 800 years since the establishment of the world government, who can run rampant in the naval headquarters Wuji. Martial warring states was difficult to block him head-on, and the 3 generals of the navy were bombarded continuously. Even if his demeanor was calm and he did not show any fierce momentum, at this moment, the figure of Yashin Kangdu was like a black cloud that was suppressed in the sky. The emotions that give people are not strong, but despair. Under the shuddering and horrified gazes of countless people, Yagami Kangdu walked towards the warring states, fell one step, and came to the front of the warring states, and the fist that swept everything was blasted out again. The warring states period had already breathed and recovered a little after being blocked by Kizaru Aokiji and others, while Yagami Kangdu continuously blasted Aokiji and the others, and his aura had weakened somewhat. But, facing Yagami Kangdu's punch, the warring states period was still unable to resist, and he vomited blood again and flew backwards. This is really, too. On the rock giant's head, Nami, who was in a small pit, looked at Yagami Kangdu in a black cloak and swept across the battlefield of the naval headquarters. Her mind was already blank. Even in the East China Sea, even in the empty island, what she has experienced is not so shocking. Chapter 415. Golden light fills the sky, frozen for thousands of miles. The higher the status and the higher the strength, the more clearly the terror of the top forces in the sea, such as the Admiral Ouchi and other naval admirals, is enough to sweep their entire ship by one person, and it is still the end of the crushing. But now, of Yagami Kangdu, these admirals who were almost invincible in her eyes were so vulnerable that they collapsed and flew away with a single punch. This is the real, peak power that belongs to this world. No one can stop it. No one is invincible. Even in this naval headquarters, where countless pirates are feared, there is no one who can stop it. Not one, not one. Tiankong Cloud Sword. Ice Age. Green pheasants and the yellow monkeys. They scrambled back to the battlefield and attacked the 8 gods Kangdu in unison, attacking the backs of the 8 gods. But Yagami Kangdu simply ignored the attack of the 2 and continued on to the warring states period. The Golden Blade and the Frozen Earth were all contained behind Yagami Kangdu, unable to break through the space occupied by the Day Tiger. Of the Navy, seeing countless top combat powers is nothing, walking like a stroll in a leisurely garden, At this moment, Yagami Kangdu, the strongest in the world, is no longer enough to define his position, and another word has appeared in everyone's heart. Invincible. Invincible. Kasaragi and Aokiji saw that their respective attacks were ineffective, and neither turned away, but neither of them stopped attacking, and continued to attack with gritted teeth. They know that Yagami Kangdu has the ability of the space system, which can neutralize almost all attacks, but at the same time of nullification, Yagami Kangdu is also unable to launch an attack, which is equivalent to the body in another dimension, unable to be attacked or attacked. Others. But, just as Kazaru and Aokiji gritted their teeth to stop Yagami Kangdu, a figure rushed over, kicked Aokiji's waist and kicked it away. That figure was surrounded by blue flames, and it was the Phoenix Marco. Phoenix Marco, are you guys dying? The Lieutenant General of the Naval Headquarters was taken aback and couldn't help shouting loudly. Marco sneered and said with a sneer, "No way, who made our Whitebeard pirates not like to owe others favors? Since Yagami Kangdu wants to destroy your navy, then we have to help." That's right. Foil Beasta slashed at Kazaru with a sword, forcing Kiwi to stop Bachi Changu, saying, "Iori Kangdu killed that bastard with Blackbeard. If you don't pay back the favors you owe soon, you will not be able to sleep well." The Aokiji and Kazaru's faces were both ugly, but at this time, they couldn't allow them to think about anything, so they could only drink lowly and take action with all their strength. For a time, golden light filled the sky, and thousands of miles were frozen. Ho! Marco roared loudly, and the blue flames all over his body were intertwined, and he rushed towards Kyabu, while the other foil swords Beasta, Fire Fist Ace and others also roared and rushed over. Of the Whitebeard pirates and Aokiji, Kyabu once again fought fiercely together. And at the same time, Sengoku on the other side has fallen into the most critical situation in his life. Even if Akainu has already rushed to help, but because he has been seriously injured, even if the two of them are combined, it is difficult to resist the offensive of Yagami Kangdu. Feilu remind you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 416, Great Terror, the Head of the 4 Emperors. Boom, boom, boom. Every time Yashin Kangdu fell, the magma he hit splashed everywhere, and the ground cracked inch by inch, causing the Warring States period to go backwards. Wearing a black cloak, he used a pair of fists to face Sengoku and Akainu. Meteor Volcano. Akainu roared loudly, and half of his body was surging frantically with magma. At this time, he couldn't care about controlling the attack range, so he directly pushed the power to the maximum and bombarded the Yagami Kangdu. Now that the entire naval headquarters is almost destroyed, how much damage will be caused, whether it will hurt one's own people and so on. Boom! In the face of Akainu, it was another simple punch. This punch slammed into the magma that seemed like a volcanic eruption, surging frantically, as if a stone stirred up 1,000 layers of waves, turning the vast magma into a vortex of a day tiger, and then collapsed with a bang. Come! Immediately afterwards, Iori Kangdu waved his backhand, and a day tiger swung out, collided with the shock wave from the Warring States period in the void, creating ripples visible to the naked eye, annihilating each other. Boom! Yagami Kangdu did not directly pursue Sengoku, but this time he suddenly turned around and threw a punch in the direction of Akainu. Akainu's condition is not much better than that of the Warring States period. In the previous battle with Whitebeard, he was already close to being seriously injured, and later he suffered a blow from Yagami Kangdu. His condition can be said to be comparable to that of the Warring States period. It is barely exerting its combat power. Damn, how could this be? Facing the punch of Yagami Kanto, Akainu. Fist is hard to push up, but it is like a man's arm is a chariot, and I can only feel the force that I can't resist surging. It's like a bulldozer going forward. No matter how strong the manpower is, the Earth machine can only be forced to retreat and roll over, and it is impossible to fight against it. Akainu gritted his teeth, his eyes full of unwillingness. Why? Who appeared inexplicably have such a power to destroy the world? His heart was filled with deep unwillingness, but no matter how resentful he was, it was impossible to make up for the strength gap between him and Yagami Kangdu. In less than a second of stalemate, his whole body was completely disintegrated, turning into a mass of wriggling magma and flying backwards. Red Dog. Sengoku saw Akainu being blasted away by Yagami Kangdu. His face changed drastically, and then he saw. Yagami Kangdu turned his head to look at him, and his heart suddenly screamed bad. The Akainu that was punched by Yagami Kangdu flew upside down, and after temporarily losing his fighting power, he looked towards the warring states, lifted his foot and stepped out. The whole person suddenly rushed towards the warring states. Boom! A punch fell, and the earth under the feet of the warring states shattered into slag. Another punch fell, and the great Buddha form of the warring states period was forcibly broken up, and half of his body was embedded in the ground. At this moment in the warring states period, looking at the Yagami Kangdu who was standing there, exuding an almost invincible aura, his heart was full of regrets. Why? At first, Yagami Kangdu was punished earlier. Why didn't he simply execute Yagami Kangdu after catching Yagami Kangdu, but locked him in the advanced city? When Yagami Kangdu was weak, there were obviously so many opportunities to eradicate the opponent, and the situation today could be avoided, but they were missed one by one. In the end, Yagami Kangdu grew up completely and became such a terrifying mountain today, even more terrifying than the white beard back then. 417th chapter. Warring States died. The original Whitebeard. Sitting in the New World by itself, it is difficult for the Navy to suppress the pirate forces. You must know that when the era of the great pirates just started, there were no 4 emperors yet, but even if only Whitebeard stood at the peak, the Navy would have nothing to do with him. But the current Iori Kangdu is stronger than Whitebeard. Whitebeard only has the ability to defend and make it impossible for the Navy to destroy him, while Iori Kangdu can reverse and occupy a dominant position. Able to defeat the strength and power of the Navy. Sengoku. Seeing that Sengoku was in a critical situation, Garp roared anxiously and punched, smashing half of the rock giant's body and rushing towards Yagami Kangdu. But at this time, the Warring States period had already fallen into a state of near death, completely lost its combat effectiveness, half of the body was embedded in the ground, and he didn't even have the ability to move. In the face of Garp's help, Yagami Kangdu punched his face expressionlessly. Boom! Fist to fist. Kapuna's armed color standing at the peak of the sea is even slightly stronger than the Iori Kangdu at the moment, and in terms of pure strength, it is also stronger than Iori Kangdu, but all of this is like a river in the vastness. In front of the unstoppable Tianyu, they were all washed away. That was enough to tear everything apart. The Day Tiger defeated Garp's armed color, smashed Garp's power, and staggered Garp's entire body backwards. Even Garp couldn't stop Yagami Kanto's punch. No. Should be said that only Garp didn't fly upside down after receiving Kangdo's punch. Farewell, Sengoku. Yagami Kanto punched Garp back with a punch. His head to look at the Warring States period, his eyes were full of indifference. He raised his feet, and spoke in a gentle tone. Although at the beginning, he may not know about his love for the Warring States, but everything after that, the Warring States must know, and every time he is pursued and suppressed, it must be an order issued by the Marshal of the highest power of the Navy. Come out and mix. It will eventually be repaid. Under the gazes of countless people who were either horrified, terrified, or pale-faced, and in a situation where Garp roared and Akainu was ferocious, but it was too late to stop it, Yagami Kangdu just stepped on it like this. In the 22nd year of the Great Pirate Era, the Marine Headquarters of the Navy Headquarters, the current Marshal of the Navy, the Supreme Decision-Maker Buddha of the Warring States in the Battle of the Top War. Died in battle, Marshal of the Warring States. Mr. Warring States. The entire naval headquarters was suddenly silent at this moment. Countless people stopped their movements, and even some surviving admirals hugged their heads at this moment, and their fighting spirit almost collapsed. Marshal Warring States actually died. He was killed by Yagami Kangdu in the Navy headquarters. What will the world become? All over the world at this moment, the people who watched this scene through the broadcast were all blank in their hearts and muttered like they were absent-minded. Some people are scared, some people are excited, and some people are at a loss. People who are afraid of the terrifying and excited people of the Yagami Kingdo pirates, are deeply oppressed by the world government, and finally see the dawn of overthrowing the darkness. People who are at a loss do not know where to go. If the previous declaration of war by Yagami Kingdo was just a verbal declaration, then under the attention of countless people, beheading the Admiral Warring States is the real war. Philu reminds you, 3 things to read and collect, recommend, share. Chapter 418, Mistakes will eventually be corrected. And in the Navy headquarters, personally defeating and beheading the naval marshal, the strength of Yagami Kingdo is already fully displayed. There is no doubt that the current Yagami Kingdo and Wanguo are indeed the forces that have the most potential to overthrow the world government and establish a new dynasty in the past 800 years. His actions are too fast. In a white town somewhere, Long, the leader of the Revolutionary Army, watched the scenes of the Navy headquarters through the screen, and couldn't help shaking his head slowly. His goal is also to overthrow the world government, but the difference between today's Revolutionary Army and Wanguo is too great. And the purpose of Yagami Kanto is obviously not only to overthrow the world government, but to conquer the world, replace the world government, and establish a new regime. Under such circumstances, where should their Revolutionary Army go? With Wanguo's current power, even if he negotiates with Yagami Kingdo and tries to join forces with Wanguo to fight against the world government, the other party may not agree. And if the world government is really overthrown, the existence of their Revolutionary Army will be in an extremely embarrassing situation, and will become the enemy of the new world government, the nations. Too strong. The orange-haired girl Kurla stood beside the dragon, watching the Yagami Kingdo who had killed the naval marshal Wanguo, wearing a black cloak and standing above the ruins. Her eyes were full of shock. She had a hunch that maybe the world government was about to be overthrown, but it was not their Revolutionary Army, but the Yagami Kingdo and the nations to overthrow the world government. Navy headquarters. Sengoku, dead. Marco and other captains of the Whitebeard pirates, as well as generals such as Aokiji Kyabu, have already put down their movements and watched this scene from a distance. The noise caused by the death of the Warring States period in their hearts is not very big, because the Whitebeard has already fallen here. As a marshal of the same era as Whitebeard, Warring States, it is not a big deal to die in this naval headquarters. Next, it's your turn. Under the gazes of countless people, Yagami Kingdo slowly withdrew his indifferent gaze, glanced at the battlefield, and landed on a kainu who had blood on his forehead and mouth not far away. This indifferent look made a kainu startled. Kill the Admiral Sengoku. Even if he was forcibly beheaded under the obstruction of many admirals, Yagami Kingdo consumed less than 1/3 of his stamina. The remaining physical strength is enough to support him to continue to act recklessly on this battlefield. Whoosh! In the next instant, Yagami Kingdo lifted his foot, and the whole person disappeared suddenly. When he reappeared, he was already in front of a kainu. Punch out! A kainu's complexion changed drastically, and even Sengoku couldn't hold the fist of Yagami Kingdo. He naturally couldn't hold it. The only advantage was, after the natural devil fruit ability cancels each other out through the domineering and domineering arms, damage taken will be partially reduced. In terms of physique and defense alone, he is not as good as the Warring States period, but because the armed colors cancel each other out, the remaining damage received is reduced by the body of the element, so the resistance is not weak. Bang! Yagami Kingdo's punch fell, and Akainu's arms were intertwined to resist, but the whole person was still blasted into a mass of magma, splashing in all directions. Not good. Stop Yagami Kingdo. Chapter 419, Iron Fist Carp, a punchback. The T-Dolphin couldn't help but his face changed drastically, and shouted at the many navies present. After Sengoku died, Garp paused on the spot, but at this moment he slowly clenched his fists and took a deep breath. Anyway. He's the Navy. Enough of the commotion, you can't let you act recklessly here. Garp clenched his huge fist and rushed towards Yagami Kanto, trying to block it. And at this moment, the rock and earth avatar wriggled again to recover, and pressed the palm like a five-fingered mountain to Garp. "Leave this to me." The T-Dolphin suddenly rushed up, blocking the huge giant palm. With the help of the T-Dolphin, Garp finally got rid of the entanglement of the rock and earth incarnation, rushed to the side of Yagami Kangdu, and slammed his fist towards Yagami Kangdu. "I said that one day your navy will regret it. I said just now that this naval headquarters will be sunk into the sea today." Yagami Kangdu looked at Garp, who was rushing over, and said calmly, "If I say it, I will definitely do it, but Yagami Kangdu." Boom! He folded his 5 fingers into a fist and punched Garp. Garp also bombarded with a punch, and the 2 fists collided in the void. In an instant, it seemed that the white beard shook the fruit, and the air was shattered like 2 fast-moving trains, whistling. The middle and front collided together, and the entire earth, air, and sound waves swept out layer by layer like ripples. Ultimately, in the roar that shook the sky, the ground between Kangdo and Garp burst open, the crack spread all the way to both sides of the entire naval headquarters, and the sea water poured in, once again creating a terrifying gap. At this moment is no different from the sinking. All buildings have been reduced to ruins. 2 abyss split the Navy headquarters into 4 pieces. The sea water poured into the broken ruins along the cracks, causing the entire island to gradually be destroyed. Divide. Ice Age. Seeing that the battlefield was about to make it difficult for everyone to stand, Aokiji took a deep breath and was forced to use the power of the Ice Age again, freezing the entire island into a piece of Iceland. There is no way. The combat power of Yashin Kangdu is top-notch combat power and does not need a foothold, and many navies on their side, without a foothold, can't fight at all. In fact, even if there is a foothold, can't fight anymore. In the face of Yagami Kangdu, the world's most powerful fighting force, even a reserve general like Cha Dolphin could hardly intervene, let alone other navies. Tang, tang, tang. After taking the Iori Kangdu punch with all his strength, Garp was finally unable to resist head-on. The whole person stumbled back again and again, and every time he landed, he stepped on the ground and ice. The cracks showed how much pressure he was under. "I am getting old." Being beaten back by Yagami Kangdu again, Garp couldn't help but sigh in his heart. If it were 20 years ago, even if he couldn't beat Yagami Kangdu, he wouldn't be able to fight head-to-head with such a big punch. Disadvantage. It's not even the slightest difference. Captains like Marco, in a state of complete victory, will not be directly repulsed by a blow from the Admiral of the Navy. The gap between the captain and the general is even bigger. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 420, Akainu will die, I said. Punch. Yagami Kangdu did not pursue Garp, but turned his head to look in one direction, where the magma squirmed and gathered together, converging into the shape of Akainu. Whoosh! Yagami Kangdu ruthlessly continued to pursue. He has already participated in this top war, that admiral is not enough. In this battle, the combat effectiveness of the world government will be completely cut off. Cough, cough. Akainu coughed violently. Although the domineering of the armed color and the armed color of Yagami Kangdu offset a part of it, and the elementalization weakened part of the damage, but the attack power of Yagami Kangdu was too strong, so strong that even so, it was unbearable for him to live. Every time he coughed, blood spilled out of his mouth. Damn, Yagami Kangdu. Akainu gritted his teeth, and there was a trace of savagery on his face, but at this moment he did not dare to fight against Yagami Kangdu again, but fled to the back without hesitation. Just like when he was chasing Luffy and Ace, many captains of the Whitebeard pirates tried their best to stop him, but at this moment his position was completely reversed. In front of Yagami Kangdu, he became the target of being hunted down. Garp and other navies tried their best to stop it. Iori Kangdu, enough is enough. When Yagami Soto continued to rush towards Akainu, a purple-haired figure rushed out of the ruins, and when Garp was too late to support him, he chose to support Akainu. He is Akainu, Aokiji and others, the previous generation of Admiral, Zephyr the Black Wrist. Zephyr at this moment has not lost confidence in the Navy, has not yet left the Navy, and still holds the post of chief instructor. One by one, are they all coming to get in the way? Facing Zepha's obstruction, Yagami Kingdu still threw out his fist. Bang! Even Zepha, who has not yet broken his arm and is in his peak state, will not be the opponent of the 8 gods Kingdu at this moment, let alone Zepha, who is old and has a broken arm. Under Yagami Kingdu's punch, Zepha flew backwards, and with his strength, he could at most block Yagami Kingdu a little. The warring states, has already died in the line of duty, can't let it, you continue to misbehave here. Garp took this opportunity to rush in front of Yagami Kingdu again, and he clenched his fists, as if he had regained the momentum of chasing Pirate King Roger all over the sea. Yagami Soto stared at Garp. As you please. Boom! At the moment when the voice fell, Kingdu of the 8 gods smashed Garp with a punch, and both the domineering arrogance and the armed arrogance erupted, rising into the sky, and the vast oppression swept in all directions. 8 god Kingdu's current domineering look is not inferior to that of red hair. At this moment, it burst out, it is really earth-shattering, and you can vaguely see the domineering look that has transformed into a substance. A depressing vortex. Boom! Yagami Kingdu burst out with tyrannical arrogance. At this moment, he was like a god, and no one could stop him. With one punch, Garp was blown away again. Immediately after slamming his elbow, he blasted the meteor volcano that Akainu had slammed into the sky, turning it into countless magma and splashing around. Just relying on the arrogance of the armed color to resist it, the whole person is astonishingly motionless. Iori Kingdu is already staring at Akainu. This level of powerhouse is already at the top of the sea. It is difficult to defeat, and it is even more difficult to kill. Trying to give Akainu a chance to breathe.